Cowboy says, come on along down El Paso Way, down in the extreme western corner of Texas. El Paso, sixth largest city in the Lone Star State. Its name perpetuating the old Spanish phrase, El Paso del Norte, for the pass to the north, where Rio Grande breaks through the mountains. 3 miles northeast of El Paso lies the historic Army post Fort Bliss. Some of the finest horsemen Uncle Sam ever trained, the troopers of the 1st Cavalry Division, learned the fundamentals of fighting a war in the saddle at Fort Bliss. Its strategic importance was dramatized when cavalry units set off in pursuit of the Mexican bandit chief Pancho Villa back in the early 1900s. Since that time, the horse has taken more and more of a back seat to the tank and truck. Today, Uncle Sam's army is mostly mechanized. But down here in El Paso, they still believe there's nothing to equal the horse cavalry. There's no question about it. Many of the sand hills in this section would balk any gasoline steed ever made. But not these babies. The troopers from Fort Bliss had a reputation of being able to go anywhere. And they did. Hell-bent for leather. There's another product of the Rio Grande country, wild and willy that can go anywhere. Goats by the thousands, vast herds of them, finding the rugged country ideal for their nimble feet and prodigious climbing ability. All that fresh exercise must be good for the woolly critters, because their coats are in great demand. The finest mohair is made from the clippings. They eat plenty of green grass, and grass contains chlorophyll. But still, it's probably a good thing the section is well air-conditioned, and no buts about it. Nobody would ever mistake the aroma hereabouts for Chanel No. 5. But then it doesn't seem to worry the goats any. Times have changed in this city, noted for the 4 C's of climate, cattle, copper, and cotton. But El Paso still remembers its past with fond memory and with fond attention to dramatics. A little drama such as making folks welcome when they arrive. Strangely in contrast to the city's modern dress is this reenactment of the old shoot-'em-up Wild Western days. The rancheros ride again, as colorful a band of official greeters as ever voiced a city's welcome. They're businessmen, organized as a sheriff's posse, sallying forth to meet the train and give the visitor a rip-snorting welcome. Wouldn't you get a bang out of a reception like this? You betcha. And you can bet these new arrivals will never forget the rip-roaring howdy they receive from the rancheros when they get off the train in El Paso down in the Rio Grande. The first white man, a Spanish explorer, reached these parts way back in 1536. We won it from Mexico after the War of Liberation, 300 years later, in 1836. The influence of both old and new are quite apparent in the architecture of historic landmarks and in modern skyscrapers. When a cowboy sings the old song about boots and saddles, he's right in key when he comes to El Paso. In this land of horse lover and life in the saddle, the art of bootmaking flourishes, and he's soon all set to step out. All he needs now is the saddle. Saddle? You bet. Guess how much a fancy one costs? 5 seconds. Well, sir, for a fancy one like this saddler is making, all embellished and hand-tooled, you could buy a new automobile for the same amount of money. The art of tooling leather was a proud accomplishment of the ancient Moors. They carried the art with them into Spain, and thence via the conquistadores into the New World. Boots and saddles, and what a saddle. One that speaks of colorful romance down El Paso Way, where the river breaks through the mountains. El Paso, that hospitable town where a modern America meets the Mexico of old. Back in the good old days of the horse and buggy, it was a rare farm indeed that didn't have a carriage shed. Yes, in the good old days when a fellow could drive with one hand with no greater risk than a slap in the face, carriage making was an art as well as a business. It's not much of a business anymore, but the art still flourishes at Crimmins' carriage shop in a small Pennsylvania town. A visit here is like turning back the pages of time and peering into history. The village blacksmith hasn't had a flat tire yet. His tires are strips of iron riveted to the wheels. In recent years, the only customers have been Pennsylvania Amish people, who still believe that autos are the work of the devil. Here's the chassis. What part do you suppose comes next? The shaft. That's the part hitched up to the engine. Oops, I mean the horse. Well, here's the finished product, all set for a leisurely ride down a country lane. It didn't get you there very fast, but it got you there and back. But now stand by for a trip to Ireland. The cloth of kings. That would be referring to linen, of course. Linen, the cloth of kings. And we visit a bit of the old sword island to see linen made. The hills of Ireland, the Emerald Isle, are misty in the distance. There's a shimmering softness that makes this the land of elves. Old Ireland with its people of the soil, its two-wheeled cart, and top of the morning to you. What else will we find here in Ireland? Children, of course, wading in a tuneful little stream. But Faith and Begorra, I'm after forgetting about the nub of this story, linen. So let's visit a field where they're harvesting a crop as Irish as potatoes. Flax it is, also called lint, which ties in with that word linen. When was flax first grown? We can only guess. We know it was used by men of the Stone Age. Swiss lake dwellers used it as rope for their boats. The ancient Egyptians cultivated it, and historians believe the Phoenicians brought it to Ireland at the dawn of history. Primitive ways then, primitive ways now. The flax is pulled by hand, never cut. They're always pulling, never cutting, when linen is made. Flax has been treated like this ever since man learned to spin the fiber into cloth. The primitive dissolves. The Stone Age becomes the machine age. Flax, grown and prepared in the peasant way of old, today passes through all the technique of modern science to become Irish linen. The inner fibers are separated from the stock in the grinding mill. Those inner fibers which are a textile treasure. And the fiber is combed and combed again. Linen is a beauty queen with flaxen hair whose tresses are groomed with constant devotion. No halfway measures will do, as man learned long year ago. As I said before, they're always pulling, never cutting. A pulling machine with nary a knife breaks the flax. If cut, the ends of the fibers would not weave into thread. The tresses of flax would be lost. Here is the machine age, modern science dedicated to the traditional fabric of old, the vestments of Joseph in the Old Testament, the purple and fine linen, the sacred fabric of ancient Egypt. For long centuries, linen was the dominant textile. Today, of course, cotton is the common cloth. But linen ranks as the lordly fabric of tradition, the cloth of kings, with Irish linen the most renowned. Irish colleens come from a long line of folk whose tradition is linen. Draw the warp as the flax fiber is turned into cloth. A study in complicated technique and a study in human types. The human equation that in field or factory is Ireland. They're setting up the warp, those threads which are extended lengthwise in the loom. Then there are the threads that run crosswise to the warp, and they have a distinctive little name of their own. Maybe you'd like to take time off and recall what those crossing threads are called. Will 5 do? Woof is the answer. Sure, now you've heard about those two textile twins, warp and woof, the Mutt and Jeff of making cloth. The patterns for linen put you in mind of a player piano. These plates are the equivalent of a player piano roll. The arrangement of punch holes directs the weaving threads. Just as in the piano roll, they govern the striking of notes. This is the music of linen, and it sings many a song of sixpence for those who hit the right key. We're getting toward the end of our story, for here are the looms at work, and the finished fabric appearing as if by magic. This is damask, the pattern made by the different directions of the thread. White on white, finest of linen. Many people still speak of linen as white goods, and here we are at the climax of linen technology. The machine age reaches its climax at this stage of the linen game, but it doesn't do everything. Can't take the place of old Saul, for only the sun can bleach the delicate cloth properly. Now another question. You gals should know the answer, you men can guess. What is cambric? You have the usual 5 seconds. Cambric is a kind of linen too, very thin and very white. So our story of linen is about done. Linen as Irish as Paddy's pig and as old as the Emerald Hills. The machine age has come, it may go, who knows? But linen is still made in the age-old way. And we like to think of a picture of unchanging ways in a changing world. So, top of the morning to you. Until next time, we're all going places together.